I'm Michelle from Cannabis with Michelle. I'm a certified cannabis health coach who helps people find relief from many different ailments using medical cannabis. In this series, I'll talk to patients and colleagues who have incredible health journeys with cannabis. They use cannabis as part of their treatment plan for everything from Crohn's to PTSD and chronic pain. We'll hear their stories about how medical cannabis has helped them manage their conditions and feel better than they ever have before. Thanks for watching. Welcome to Cannabis with Michelle interviews. Today here I have Angie Lickliter. She's a cannabis and gut health specialist. She has been a Crohn's warrior for 25 years, and she credits cannabis, food, and exercise with changing her Crohn's health journey. She currently takes no medication for her gut monster, and now she's passionate about helping you do the same. So if you want to learn more about Angie, you can check her out at gutgirlcoaching.com. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining me here today on Cannabis with Michelle interviews. We're so happy to also have you as our gut specialist for the Effective Cannabis newsletter Gut Health issue. We will be exploring what it was like to deal with Crohn's disease before cannabis, and at what point cannabis came into play, and then how cannabis remains part of your life today. So we would love to hear how your experience was like working with doctors, and then we can share how you want to help others through this. So tell us about what led up to the diagnosis of your Crohn's disease and how it felt.
I attribute my Crohn's disease. I hate this word, exasperate is a word that it's just a weird word, but it made my Crohn's disease come out. Or, people talk about how people have flus, viruses, different things that make things exasperate or come out. Cancer can be one of them, certain things that kind of make it come out. I attribute my Crohn's disease, after doing years of research, to a fat-free diet I did after I had my daughter. She is now 32. That was a trendy diet. That's why I hate that word diet. It was a very trendy thing to do 100% fat-free. Well, I didn't know any better. I just knew that I needed to get off all this baby weight that I had gained from having my daughter. And I ate no fats for several months, and I lost a lot of weight really fast. I was very young then. I was only 21. Didn't think anything of it. And it took me several years to correlate back to those things after learning what I learned. But our bowels need fat, and I stripped my bowels of good things that it needed. That is a horrible diet that I hope never comes back around, or people don't ever talk about that again.
Right.
But what was happening was, several years, I was in my late 20s. So I'm guessing 5-ish years. Just like having a baby, the actual physical part of having a baby, we forget some of those things in our lives exactly when they happen, or the pain that we went through. But I just remember I would eat a meal and I would be going to the bathroom very soon after that. And the big joke when my kids were little was we were eating McDonald's. Not that I'm saying you should eat McDonald's, but back then when I was eating McDonald's, I wouldn't be able to leave the restaurant without going to the bathroom before exiting the building. It was that fast. And it started getting worse. I would have accidents. It's a very, Crohn's disease, it takes you a long time to get comfortable with talking about your bowels. It's a crappy disease. That's what I always tell people. It's a crappy disease. It really is. But, I was young, I was in my 20s. And I remember specifically this one time I was shopping with my mom. We went and had lunch, and I was in a department store, and all of a sudden I just got these sweats, like a fever, and just like pouring with sweat, had to run to the bathroom. My mom was like, something is going on here. And it took a while because, I wasn't into health or fitness back then. That was the least thing from my mind. I was just, a mom of 2 little kids and just trying to survive through life. So, I did the usual, go to my primary care doctor. They suggest I go to a GI doctor. I don't remember all the details of that. If they would have electronic records back then, I probably could dig a little deeper, but that stuff is all gone. And through a colonoscopy, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I was married to my kids' father back then, my high school sweetheart. And I just remember, because, I'm still coming out of sedation from the colonoscopy. If you've ever had one, that you're just coming back to, and they have somebody there with you. So when the doctor tells you what's wrong, somebody else can remember, because a lot of times you don't remember what they're said, coming back to. Lots of funny videos of people coming back around after that on social media. But I just remember him saying I had Crohn's disease, and I didn't know what that was, but I just remember thinking, I have a disease. I knew enough to know that I was going to be tagged with that word for the rest of my life. Insurance, just all of that stuff. My ex-husband was going through school at the time to be a nurse. I had worked in some hospital settings, and I just knew that it wasn't good. Later learning what Crohn's disease was, which Crohn's disease and colitis are underneath what's IBD, or bowel diseases. They're kind of qualified underneath there. They are in separate areas of your bowels. They can be, or they can be in the same area of the bowels. But what happens is you get inflammation. Your body is basically, the lamest way, not the lamest way, but in layman terms for me to explain it, is your body's fighting your body off. Okay.
Right.
So with Crohn's disease, it's an autoimmune. And so your body is signaled to fight itself off, but mine fights itself off in the bowels. So people that have like rheumatoid arthritis, it fights it off in their joints. You'll hear that people with rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's take the same medication, actually, which you would think.
Okay.
But they do. They take biologic, because it's all about the inflammation. It's not about where it's at. So what happens with Crohn's is your body overproduces TNA alpha proteins. I'm not going to go into the science of it too much, because I am not a big fan of all of that, but I just know my body's overproducing something. And so then my body's like, what's going on? And then it causes inflammation. What happens when your bowel's inflamed? Think of a garden hose. It becomes narrow. When it gets swollen, things can't go through. So that was part of the pain I was suffering from. And the having to go to the bathroom is your body's not absorbing anything, and it's just going right through you, basically. That's what was happening. My body wasn't digesting the food right either. Surprisingly, I wasn't underweight, which most people with Crohn's disease are. But that's where everything started, was just those type of symptoms, and got diagnosed through a colonoscopy.
Right. So you said on the podcast with Candy Dinsmore, when I watched your podcast there, that you mentioned how you were the perfect patient and always followed the doctor's orders. At what point did you start looking for other help? And were there alternative options you included as well before cannabis? And then at what point did you bring cannabis into your treatment plan?
Sure. And the reason I said I was a perfect patient is because, and I am very careful about what I say about doctors. If there's doctors listening here, their doctors are wonderful people. And there's a place and time for them 100%. And when I say I was a perfect patient is because back then I didn't know anything about my disease. I just followed what the doctor said. And I assumed he was God, and that I was supposed to do whatever he said. Right? Like, that's just what you do. I'm a very non-controversial person still this day. I don't like, I'm not going to argue with him. I'm just going to do what he says. So I went on all the medications. I did all these different things. I was, talk about the alternative medicine, the alternative things that I had tried. So I'm going to kind of fast forward to 2009. So I'm thinking it was about 1998 that I was diagnosed. So 2009, I met some ladies, and I'm still friends with them. They, it's just so weird how you remember things just like yesterday, and then I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. Ladies walked into the room, and at this time I had just bought a coffee shop, lots of stress. I still was struggling with my Crohn's disease. Looking back now, a lot of it was anxiety and the different timelines in life, anxiety and what I had going on, divorce and things would make my Crohn's flare up. But
it's crazy how the stress, like mental stress, actually like really affects our physical diseases, eh? Like how much that plays a part in it.
Right. And all of this stuff I'm saying, this is after looking back. I mean, I didn't know it when I was in it because I didn't know what I didn't know, you
Yeah.
know? I thought, I mean, I knew I had anxiety a little bit, but after really looking back into timelines, I'm like, why would I always get sick before vacations even, or a wedding, or, I'd be all bloated and just, and now that gut brain thing and the anxiety, it's
Yeah.
just, whew, yeah. So there's a lot with that. So I met these two ladies at a networking event I had gone to for my coffee shop. It's just funny how it all tied together. But they were the raw vegan coaches. These women walked in the room. They were so healthy. They were glowing. And I'm like, and they were beautiful. It wasn't that. It was just, I don't know what they're doing, but whatever they do, I want what they have. They looked so healthy. And I had never been a healthy person, a fit person. I'd never been I mean, I joined gyms, but I'd never really gone to them. I always contributed. I always say I joined, but I never went. Um, and they had been doing raw food and coached raw food eating. And I don't do that now. That's not what I do now, but I I sold patio. We still laugh when we talk. I sold patio furniture to pay for their coaching, and now I'm a coach. It's just so funny how the beginning of that just came to me actually. It's like when you're talking about it, like these things come out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I started off with coaches, and now I'm a coach, and that's how my health journey started. So I started digging into food because I paid to be in this program, and I started eating a raw vegan diet. Started feeling better. I mean, I ate nothing cooked. I started researching why cooked food can be really bad for your gut. There was a lot of research behind that, but most people with Crohn's disease can't eat raw food, which is very strange that I was able to eat all this food raw and I never had an issue with it.
Hmm.
Yeah, like nuts
Mindset
and,
too. Maybe.
what?
Maybe some
What'd
mindset
you
stuff in there too, could be.
Yeah, exactly. And I started working out. So they introduced me to At Home Workouts, which was a network marketing company. But so I started working out as well. So I decided on my own that I'm going to stop all my medication. I'm not proponent of anybody doing that. Talk to your doctor before you do that. But my personality said, no, I don't need you. And I didn't want to be on these medications. I didn't like the way they made me feel. I was on
Mhm.
biologic drugs. And if anybody listening knows about biologic drugs, they are developed for like 9 to 12 months in a lab. I mean, it's stuff that can really help people, but it also in long term can really do some damage to your body.
Mm.
I didn't want to be on those anymore. So I went off my medication. I felt amazing. I was doing, I was doing workouts. I was eating well. I did go back to eating all the foods. I wasn't a raw vegan for more than like 6 months. It was just for a short time in my life. But it really is what catapulted me forward to diving into my Crohn's disease because I knew nothing. I started drinking aloe vera juice. I just started doing all the right stuff instead of just doing what the doctor said. Now, my family, of course, didn't really like that I was doing that. And they're like, you need to talk to your doctor. But I'm just kind of a rebel in that, I say I don't like confrontation, but as far as that stuff goes, kind of a little bit of a rebel. And I was going to the doctor still, and he'd ask, and I'd be like, no, I'm not. And he's like, well, I know you're feeling okay. But so um, fast forward, and I don't know exactly what year, but I started having flare-ups again. And like I said, with the flare-ups, they are just basically your body's fighting itself off. It gets flared up, and I would have fevers. I would throw up. My disease came back with a vengeance, and I had some real mindset struggles behind that because I was actually going to school for gut health coaching when all this started. And I thought, I'm preaching all this stuff and it's not working for me anymore. I felt a
Mm.
lot of guilt, but now I just know it's part of my journey. It is what it is. And I wasn't on all those drugs for like 6 or 7 years that could have put me in a different place as well. I didn't take those things. So I ended up very sick, in and out of the hospital, not able to work. I was at home in my pajamas because I say my gut monster because I used to work. I was a rep for a CBD oil company, and when I used to speak on stage about my CBD journey, I wasn't able to talk about Crohn's disease. Like they were very much worried that we would get sued. So I always say my gut
Oh,
monster. Yeah,
okay.
tying it, my gut monster was what I would say instead of Crohn's disease because we weren't allowed to say that we healed anything or fixed anything or
Oh,
anything.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I named it my gut monster. Um, so I was getting very sick and I was losing a lot of weight. And what we found out after I switched doctors, so all of this stuff all kind of happened at once. Let me kind of circle back and get my thoughts together real quick because I'm kind of going all over the place.
Sure, no worries.
Um, yeah, you just start talking, you're like, wait a minute. So what happened is I was in the hospital. We were trying to figure out what kind of medication for me to go on. Because at this point, my family's like, you are in denial. You've got to fix. And I was so sick. There was just no getting around trying medication. So my GI doctor that I'd had since my diagnosis wanted me to go back on this biologic and then this biologic. And I'm trying different stuff while I'm just getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And nothing was working. So I decided to change GI doctors because I just felt like he wasn't on the up and up with anything, like anything holistic I had to say. It was like, there was no way, like, go take this medicine, boom. And I'm like, no, but this, and there's no nutrition involved. There's never any nutritional education, nothing about anything but drugs.
Yes.
And I will say that when I was getting biologic drugs, which were 2-hour intravenous IVs, IV therapies, I would have every 8 weeks for 4 years. I did that.
Wow.
At the cost of my insurance of about $5,000 a month. I would sit there, and my nurse that would be doing the infusions, because we became close, because I'd see her every 8 weeks, have to take off work for 2 hours, like the whole deal. She was
Takes up a
eating.
lot of time and money and
Oh,
your
oh,
youth. Like you were pretty young doing these
oh yeah. I was
infusions.
in my early, probably 30s, mid 30s. Yeah. When I was doing the infusions back in the day.
Yeah.
She was eating free lunch every day. I was there and I was like, what? Big pharmacy reps were bringing her food. And I started to connect the dots. Back then, I kind of started connecting the dots, but looking back, I really connect the dots now. Like,
Yeah.
okay, now I know why I'm on this drug, because you get free food. I mean, I can't, that shit's not fair to say that, but there is some truth to some of that, if we dive deeper. So anyway, fast forward, I switched GI doctors. And we did a colonoscopy and they couldn't finish it because they couldn't get the scope up there because my bowels were like closed, like they were so bad. So instead of just like the other doctor just throwing medicine at me, he's like, we need to figure out what's going on with you. So we did an MRI, and this was January of 2018. All of this stuff kind of happened at the end of 17 and the beginning of 18. And at this time I had been sick for a good 6-9 months at home on steroids, massive amount of steroids, hydrocodone. My husband worked at 6 a.m. He worked for the federal government. And I would go to bed at like 10 and my bowels would wake up at 11 p.m. And they would be awake. And I say they because it was like a thing and like a monster all night long. Rocking on all fours, heating pads, hot baths, crying. My husband's got to go to work. Somebody's got to work. I can't work. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced. I mean, having a baby was a cakewalk compared to this because there's nothing you could do. I mean, I'm just taking hydrocodone as much as I could every 4 hours and nothing is relieving it. And if you've ever been in chronic pain for months at a time, it really wears on you. Look now, and I was extremely depressed. I don't feel like I'm a depressed person. I'm a high energy, but looking back, I know I was. There's no way I couldn't have been.
Yeah.
But I never saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I was just like, just kind of just going through the motions every day and just trying to figure out what was going to happen. Of course, at this time, I couldn't complete school because I just didn't feel like getting on my computer. And when I changed the doctor, they did an MRI and they found, and I'm doing this little piece just for education on Crohn's disease, they found what's called looping and fistulas. And at that point in 2018, I really wasn't even familiar what that was because my disease didn't have that yet. And I hadn't really read about it anywhere besides fistulas a little bit. So what looping is I go back to the garden hose scenario. The garden hose gets like pressure, it flops. So that's what happens with your bowels. When they get really inflamed and like puffy, they flop and they twist. Okay. So you can imagine when they're all twisted like that, That's going to be for anything to go through. And then I also had fistulas, which are basically, again, like a hose. If the pressure and you have a weak spot, it balloons up out the side. Well, then it tunnels to another piece of bowel. Or sometimes people get anal fistulas to where it's tunneled to your anus or your vagina. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Mine was bowel to bowel fistulas. So imagine a highway and the loops are all jacked up and
Mm.
people are taking cross paths, like Christmas lights in a box after sitting there for 5 years. I mean, just it was a mess. So this is why I was having so much pain, we found out. And so it was like surgery is the answer. But the day I went in to find out about my MRI results, I was told I had cancer. My husband wasn't with me. My mom went with me because he had to work. And he said, based on the endobography or whatever that word is, the reading of the MRI, I think the doctor's saying that you have a malignant tumor in your bowels. And I'm like, what? So I leave there
Words
knowing
you
I've got
never
to
want
call.
to hear ever.
Right. I mean, like, you just can imagine. And I remember my husband coming home that afternoon because I was with my mom. Like, I couldn't drive. I was in so much pain and on so many pain pills at this time. And my husband's face, I remember what it will look like. And I've never seen that look on my husband's face. I mean, the white, and he was, I mean, so when I left the doctor's office that Friday, I was able to get into a colorectal surgeon on Monday. Thank the Lord, because from Friday to Monday, I was writing myself off this earth. You're told you have malignant cancer and you've experienced so much pain for the last 6 to 9 months. Death is really probably like, okay, I guess that's what's going to happen, because that explains what the hell's been going on with me for all this time, right?
It felt easier than
So,
struggling through all that hard stuff.
oh, yeah, and you talk about losing hope, like, whew, it's gone. Like, I don't know what this
Yeah.
looks like. I couldn't wait for Monday, but I was scared for Monday. I walked into the colorectal surgeon's office and she said, I'm reading your MRI. I can't believe that doctor told you that. I don't think you have cancer. She goes, I think you have an abscess. That was the longest 3 days of my life over the weekend, thinking I was going to die. I mean,
Yeah.
or just thinking, how am I going to get through all this? Like, I have kids, I have grandkids, like what? So she explained to me, you definitely need surgery, da, 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 da. So let me back up, between being told that I had this fistulas, finding in the process, and I can't remember the dates, and I'm sorry, but in the process of figuring all this out, sitting at home on my couch, I had ordered CBD. We're going to get to the cannabis part of all of this now. Okay. So January 2018, this is when I'm starting to figure out what I need to do. This is right before the MRI, I guess it was. Yeah, I guess it was right before the MRI. I ordered CBD from Amazon because
Probably
I
not
didn't know
your
any
best
better.
quality CBD, but it's a start.
Absolutely not. But my friends that were cannabis users are like, have you used cannabis? You should try cannabis. I'm like, my husband works for the federal government. He does the drug testing at work. We lived in the state of Kansas, which is still not legal. And I'm like, no, that's not in our vocabulary. I mean, I used to do that when I was a kid, teenager.
Mhm.
Um, but I just that was not part of our household. So, the CBD, this is just the day I get this, one of those days you can remember. I got this bottle and I got it for my dog too, because she had arthritis in her knees, and I was like, oh, it's good for dogs and humans. I think I'm going to try this. I had tried everything else, and it was a big bottle, like this big, for $30. It was basically green water. I laughed. This is so ironic. The day I get it in the mail, I am in a Crohn's disease forum, which I spent some of my afternoons in my pajamas on my computer, because I just didn't, those were people that were suffering. And it was like, I would look through people's posts and articles and things, trying to find a glimmer of hope. And somebody said, has anybody tried CBD for their Crohn's? I just started using XYZ brand. I won't mention it, but XYZ brand. And in a matter of a few weeks, I felt like a different person. Like, the lady was like, I'm not promoting this, like, Google it yourself. I Googled it and I'm like, oh, wow, there's a lot more science behind this than I knew about. And what I
Yeah.
ordered from Amazon is not CBD oil. It's labeled CBD oil, but it's not oil.
It could be hemp seed oil, which is very different, but
Right, exactly. And that's what it was. If even that, I don't even know now. But and I remember reading the ingredients on this bottle, and there was 3 ingredients. And I was like, and I at this time, was ingredient. I was watching everything I put in my body or
Right.
nothing I put in my body, because at this point I was hardly eating because it digesting food hurt. I was down to barely little mashed potatoes, bone broth. My husband became a really good bone broth maker. God love him. um, and so I contacted a girl that sold it. It was a network marketing company, but that didn't bother me. I just knew I didn't know anybody else that sold CBD. Contacted her. I ordered it on the spot. I received this, and this is before I had the death sentence. Let's just say this. I call it, the cancer, and that you have to go get surgery, because I was doing everything I could. I started taking the CBD, and it was 750 milligrams CBD oil. I started taking it, and within 2 days, I felt hope. I can't describe what I felt, but I can explain to you that I put makeup on and I left the house, and I hadn't done that in months.
That's just amazing already. Like that 2 days of CBD oil giving you that much hope already. Like so incredible.
Well, the cliche, dope is hope. I'm telling you what, for me. And it was THC free. I mean, there was no THC in it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, and so I knew something was right. Like I knew, I mean, when you get a disease like that, you know your body really, really well.
Right.
I was still taking hydrocodone. But I was starting to take less of that as I was taking more CBD. And looking back then, I was not hardly taking anything because I didn't have a cannabis coach, right? Like I
Right.
needed me then, right? So I then the diagnosis of the fistulas, the looping, and the cancer, and not having cancer, and you need surgery came like right after that. And I told my GI doctor that I was taking it, and he was like, whatever.
Oh
The
yeah.
surgeon,
Just dismissed.
oh yeah, just as I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I've heard people can take that, but you need surgery. And I'm like, yeah, I understand I need surgery, but you're not listening to me. Like
Yeah.
so, but the surgeon, she said, you can take it up to the day of surgery. I believe it can help you.
Nice.
So the doctor and the surgeon are two different people, right? The
Yeah.
colorectal, so they're different people. And she's the one that told me I didn't have cancer. She was all for it. So this was in January. I started taking CBD oil. I had surgery in April. Somewhere in there, somewhere closer to the surgery date, probably more like in March, I was able to get off my steroids. I had been on steroids for 6 to 9 months, somewhere in there. And every time I would taper the dosage down to 5 to 10 milligrams, my body would be like, nope, we like this too much. We need you back. I'd get like your
Yeah.
body gets addicted to those, just like opioids, like trying to get off of those. So I don't know what it's called, but there's a reaction you have when you have steroids, when you're on steroids and you go into surgery, your body doesn't like wake up very well from anesthesia. So it's very good if you get on steroids before surgery. So that was a huge win for me, right? I'm getting off a medication that I hate, that makes me a bitch. Like, people that have had steroids know what it makes you feel like. Have you ever had steroids before?
No, not steroids. No.
I never wanted to go back on them, but it's the only thing that was helping me somewhat, because it was helping somewhat control the inflammation. So I took CBD oil for almost 4 months before my surgery. This is where the miracle happens. I was supposed to be in the hospital for a week. I was fitted for an ostomy bag. I had bought new clothes, bought new underwear. I was as mentally as prepared as you can be to know that you're going to have a poop bag on the side of your stomach. My husband and I were preparing for him to retire and move to Lake of the Ozarks. Like I was going to be in a bikini all the time, but my friends bought me high-waisted stuff. Like I bought the
Yeah.
pajamas, I bought things to prepare myself for an ostomy bag. I even went to a class on how to fit it. I went under, was marked with the circle where the ostomy bag was going to be, because they said for my bowels to repair, after surgery, they were going to need that. I had a 5-hour surgery. They removed a foot of my ileum cecal valve. That's a very popular place where people have Crohn's. It's on your right side. And I'm pointing to it now because I always tend to do that. And it's the valve that controls bowel, stool, water, whatever, from your small intestine to your large intestine. Most people don't even know
Okay.
they have it. My GI doctor I never even knew what that was until it was removed. I mean, really, that's how they don't even talk about it. So it's this valve, it's a flap. So they had to remove a foot there. That's where my Crohn started years ago. And I knew that was in my ileum. I didn't know there was a valve there. And where that abscess was, they removed 18 inches of my sigmoid colon, where there was an abscess and like an infection, basically. And it caused, lots of, so they removed 2 sections of my bowels. Surgery was a lot longer than they thought. But when I woke up from anesthesia, I'm like, there was a few choice words I said, and they were the F word. I have an effing bag. And they're like, no, you don't need one. And I'm like, what? Like, it was huge. And the surgeon came in and she said, besides the place that has been infected forever and this abscess you had, I went through your bowels. You are so healthy. There's no evidence of any disease anywhere else. I was able to leave the hospital after 3 days instead of 7.
Nice.
I'm walking the halls talking to people and they're like, you are walking? Like, what is going on? I mean, but I attribute a lot of that to I was into health and fitness and was healthy before I got really sick. Like I would work out
And that
even if I
helps
was,
100% for sure.
yes, I was doing yoga. I was trying to do just what I could to physically, but to not have that ostomy bag was just huge. And so I go back to the surgeon 2 weeks later for my follow-up, and she was like, the surgeon and the GI doctor both said that my recovery was a miracle, and not having an ostomy bag afterwards was a miracle. So, and the only thing I changed was the CBD oil from January to April, was taking that CBD oil. So that was in April. October of 2018, I had a routine colonoscopy because it had been like a year since, because I had it a year before when we were finding all this stuff out. Found no evidence of any disease returning. Now, granted, they cut it out, but I know in my heart that if I wouldn't have found CBD, that my course of surgery would have looked a ton different.
And you would have still been on steroids, and then it would have been harder to get up from the surgery. You would have been there for the whole week.
I could have had an ostomy bag. I mean, I can't, people can say, well, you can't say that that's, I'm like, no, I can't say it was the CBD, but I can attribute it to all of the things that I coach people on now that they need to do to
Yes.
stay healthy. Because if I would have been my 20-some-year-old self, just being diagnosed with Crohn's and having that, my surgery outcome would have been horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big proponent. So that's where cannabis was introduced into my life, was 2018. And people say cannabis, and I'm like, well, actually, my story is more about the CBD. And I wish I was able to take a little THC with it, because I probably would have had a little bit better results, but
Right.
it wasn't available to me at that point, and it wasn't something I would entertain at that point. But then my husband retired and we moved to Missouri, where I was able to get my medical card at that point.
And so do you introduce THC into your life now?
Yes. So after going to Cannabis Coaching Institute, I realized the power of the plant tenfold with CBG. Oh, my new favorite.
That's my favorite cannabinoid too.
I have a real quick story about that. So CBG, for those that are tuning in, is really effective inflammation in the gut, because it really affects your CB2 receptors down there. And I started taking it, started making it myself, and I make my own medicine at home, make my own CBD and CBG, started taking my own CBG, and I went to Mexico, took it with me. I don't leave home without that. And there was no THC in it. And I was having like these little, like, I almost felt like ghost pains in both surgical sites, left and right, where my bowels were resectioned. And I was going to cannabis school at the time, and I was like, oh, it wasn't pain, it was quirks, little nervy quirk things. And I'm thinking, oh no, I'm getting sick again. I was so paranoid. I got back from vacation and I talked to I call her my pop partner, Becky. She was my study buddy in cannabis school.
Becky Brown?
And I was telling her, yeah, she's
Okay,
awesome. Right. She was awesome. We had a great time together. And we really helped each other a lot, not just with school, but other stuff too.
Nice.
Telling her about this, and she goes, well, you've been taking CBG. She goes, you remember when they talked about class and the helping nerves? and nerve damage, I was having tinging pain, like nerve. I think it was repairing some of my stuff from surgery. I mean, this was just a couple years after surgery, and it takes a long time for that stuff to heal. So I stopped the CBG for just a little bit just to see what happened and backed off of it a little bit. And that tinge that went away. It wasn't pain. It wasn't, I'm not saying what I was doing was bad. It was exactly what I needed to be doing. And then I
Right.
started back up on it and I never had those twinges again. So I really feel like it was in there kind of doing some magic in there. Now that I
Hmm.
think back, it felt like nerves kind of waking up or doing something in there. Um, so yeah, I take CBG in the morning because I feel like it gives me a little energy. I take CBD in the afternoon or evening, and I use THC for, relaxation, obviously anxiety. I will microdose with CBD and THC together if I feel like I've got something that is going to maybe cause me, I don't have like anxiety anymore,
Right.
but a lot of times fear and excitement can mimic that. So if I start
Hmm.
to get excited about something, I just am like on my microdose with that. Um, but my sleep too, like my sleep is so tied to the gut, to the brain, to all of it's this big, thing. And so if you're not sleeping, which I wasn't when I was really sick, now that I know, if
Yeah.
I could have gotten some good sleep back then, even if it was with high doses of THC, it would have done my body really good to get some sleep because I was manic, no sleep at that point. So, um, you know, my journey with Crohn's, you know, food, there's so many things that come to play into it, but the big thing was the cannabis with the CBD as far as the turning point with all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so awesome.
and I love being able to make my own stuff at home, like being able to make my medicine and I know who's making it and I know that it's helping me and, you know,
For sure. And you can really curate to exactly like you what you want. You like the CBG in there, you like a little bit of CBD and THC together, and you can make exactly what works for you. I love making my own medicine at home too.
yeah. And another part of my journey, is, and I want to say this too, because I know a lot of people struggle with this. My husband and I, we enjoyed alcohol. We used to drink wine. We lived at Lake of the Ozarks. It was, I always felt I'm a gut health coach. We shouldn't have drinks, but we were very social drinkers. We were an alcoholic or anything like that. I won't say that, but I knew in my head, I had this battle in my head of like, this is really not probably very good for me, but this is what society does. And that's another part I want to be an advocate of is society tells us that alcohol is okay.
Yeah,
And
it's so much
and
stigma behind the plant still.
exactly. And I will tell you, I quit drinking February 13th. Valentine's Day, it was a year ago that I had a drink. I've ever had a drink. And people say, oh, you were an alcoholic. I'm like, no, I just chose. I challenged myself to 75 days of no alcohol and dove into alcohol and decided no. So, cannabis is the way I may relax at night or, but I can tell you what, there's nobody that's overdosed on cannabis, and there's a lot of people that overdose on alcohol. And
Absolutely.
cannabis is very good for the gut, and alcohol is not good for anything. Like so yeah. So that I attribute to cannabis to also helping me, quit drinking too.
For sure. I know I really leaned on cannabis when I was trying to help my candida. And
Oh,
and I found that I really reacted to alcohol, and especially trying to do a full sugar cleanse to get rid of the yeast, the excess yeast in the body with the candida. Getting rid of alcohol was a big thing. Not that I was ever a huge drinker. I'd have here and there because I'd always just get like skin itch and stuff like that from drinking it. So, I got reactions. I didn't care for alcohol that much anyway. But it was so great to still be able to take the edge off and relax and not contribute to the candida growing in my body, but still be able to, clean that out, stay on a sugar cleanse and get off alcohol. And
yeah.
I don't choose alcohol anymore.
Good for you. And there is a big sobriety, I mean, a big movement with that as well, because people are finally realizing, and I'm going to compare big pharma to the alcohol industry because it's all marketing. It's all
Right.
marketing. And I used to
Yeah.
make my own wine. I mean, I was like, oh, red wine and steak, red wine and pizza, like food pairings and all this stuff. And we just learn from a very young age that it's okay,
Yeah.
that this is, that it's poison. And, but all my friends have caught, I mean, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you're a horrible person because you drink. It's just not, I just choose not to now.
Mhm.
And I enjoy life much more. And I don't battle those thoughts in my head of like, gosh, I really want a glass of wine tonight. I shouldn't. It's bad. Like the answer is just no.
Yeah. It's easy. It's an easy choice. When you know
Like
how
you,
it works in your body and how it doesn't work in your body for you, it's an easy choice.
absolutely. Yeah. And I wake up in the morning feeling amazing.
Yeah.
For
So one
sure.
other thing you were mentioning in your podcast with Candy, you talked about prayer and listening and learning how to listen to the quiet in your mind. This is one of the many ways and my favorite ways to incorporate cannabis into your health. Do you use cannabis to help with this connection to your spirituality still?
Um, when I was talking about that in the podcast, I wasn't at the time. That was referring to I'm high energy, I speak fast, I am religious, and I was following a kind of a business coach and read this book, and she talked about praying and settling your mind and listening for answers, right? Like there can be answers out there, and I don't care if you believe in God or the universe or whatever. If you quiet your mind, things come to you. And Gut Girl coaching actually dropped into my brain when I was quieting my mind in the bathtub. Actually, it was with a glass of wine at that time, not cannabis. But I will tell you now, as far as quieting my mind and centering myself, I one of my favorite things to do is consume cannabis and do yoga in the evening with my husband,
So beautiful.
because it's oh, I have tingles all over my body. It
Yeah, me
is
too.
it's just I don't, if any of you listen to Joe Rogan, man, he talks about it, and like it yoga with using cannabis is extraterrestrial. I call it. I mean, you stretch so much better. You're so much inward into yourself, because with cannabis you can block the day out. You're here within your mind and your body and your soul, and you can block all of that other stuff out.
Yeah,
um I used to have a lot of mind racing in the middle of the night. You wake up and all of the things that you have to do. I don't have that anymore. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I may think about something and I go right back to sleep. And that's not due to cannabis, but it's learned from me calming my mind down.
right.
I but I do meditate in the morning, but I do that first thing when I wake up, like in bed, throw headphones on, and I meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. And if I don't, I can tell throughout the day, just even 10 or 15 minutes. It just sets my mind right. Um, so, that doesn't mean I haven't used cannabis in the morning, but it's more of a meditative thing at night, relaxation. And my husband loves it too. Like it's
Yeah.
just almost get into yoga, but he really enjoys that too, because it is our time to just chill and center ourselves.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's so amazing, and it's so great that you can share that experience with your husband and be able to have that time together and that connection and relaxation. That's beautiful.
And it's so good for sleep too. You know,
Yeah,
it puts your whole body and mind to rest instead of being on a screen.
right.
you know, I always tell people I'm a huge sleep coach too. I mean, I just really like
It's
to
so
help people.
important.
Very, very important.
You strongly believe in being an advocate for your own health and should take control of it. You want to tell our listeners a little bit more about taking control of their own health?
Yeah. And again, I don't, taking control of your health means working with your doctor if you can. If you are diagnosed with something or you have an illness, dive deeper than they know, because there are so many resources out there. If you are a person that wants holistic health, if you're not into holistic health and you just want to know, there's so much research. I mean, be careful with Googling stuff, because there is so much stuff out there. Like, oh, I have a cold, or I have that, you could Google and have all kinds of stuff. But working with your health practitioner, whatever, functional medicine doctor, working with them to come up with a plan for your health that works for you. It is your body. It is not theirs. Um, you pay a doctor, you are their client. You don't go there for free. And so you should expect to get what you're wanting out of that. Um, Research, try a bazillion different things. Don't give up. Um, I have done, I have done the Atkins diet. I have done Weight Watchers. I have done everything as far as what to eat and tried everything. And I finally, years later, have figured it out what works for my body. I know if I eat this, it's probably not going to work out so well. Um, I also believe in the 80-20 rule with all of that stuff too. Like we all have to live our lives. Like I love pizza. I eat pizza. It's usually gluten-free or cauliflower, but I don't eat that every night, you know? So I think just standing up for yourself in your healthcare and knowing that doctors went to school, but that doesn't mean they know everything because most doctors don't know about the endocannabinoid system. And they don't, most doctors, I think what I've heard is they have like a 3-hour class about nutrition and
That's
how
what I
food
hear
works in
too. Yeah. So little on nutrition, barely anything on the endocannabinoid system. And I don't know if they even know the whole fascia system yet either. You
probably
know?
not. So it is hard. Unfortunately, it is hard to find. Like I've searched in areas like GI doctors that are into holistic stuff. They don't tend to cross that line a lot of times, but sometimes you can work with a holistic doctor or functional medicine or something or a cannabis coach, and they can help you figure out how to speak to your doctor about what's going on because you probably are going to educate your doctor on some stuff they didn't even know about as far as the endocannabinoid system. And the reason I became a cannabis coach and is because if I would have had somebody like myself in January of 2018, everything went well, but I think it could have went even better. I mean, my pain would have been less. I probably, hopefully wouldn't have been able to take hydrocodone, like, getting off of all of that stuff. I don't take any of that stuff now, but, um, I look at people that take that stuff on a daily basis and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much more than just your body. Your body's so addicted to that stuff. So,
Right.
and I think also part of my mission statement has always been, we kind of tweak things as we go along is, take control of your health and live the life of your dreams. And the reason I always like to say that is because if you are sick, if you are not sleeping, if you're not, you are not living up to your full potential of what you are dreaming of. And I'm not talking about having a nice car or going on vacation. I'm just talking about and just living your
Yeah.
best life. And I honestly feel like I live my best life. And I can tell you that my friends and the people that know around me, I live a really awesome life and I've designed it to be that way. And part of that's just stuff like not working in a job that you hate because, or, following your passions. All of that is included in there because, we only have one life to live. And if you're not living it to the fullest, then, so that's
I
how
love it.
yeah.
So great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else you would like to add to your story?
I'm just looking at my notes here. Um, I'm going to say this because it is sometimes it's hard to talk about cannabis. You get looked at differently. My husband and I are first winter in Arizona, and I've randomly chose people to tell them that I'm a cannabis coach. We have a lot of older people here, and they kind of look at you funny, but you'd be surprised. So, I'm an advocate for it 100%. If you're watching this and you're like, man, I want to try it, but I just don't know, reach out to somebody because there are so many safe ways to use cannabis. And I'm not talking about, I'm going to use this word because this is what I always used to, stoned, like back in the
Right.
day, we talked about stoners and you were a stoner and you smoked pot. That is not what cannabis is about.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, she may watch this someday. We've never had this conversation. She knows I use CBD. I don't know if she knows I use THC. She may, but I don't think she wants to talk about it. And that's fine. She doesn't need to, it's my journey. But there are ways to use cannabis and not be stoned or have that feeling of, a lot of people are like, I don't want to feel out of control. Well, I can tell you what, when I do yoga in the evening, I am totally control my body. Um, totally control what's going on. So that's what I would say, because I was really ashamed at first. And going to cannabis school helped me realize that, whoa, there's a lot of people that are doing this more than you would know. And as
And
I
for
talked
so
to,
many different great reasons. Like nobody was there because they wanted to smoke recreationally and get stoned. Like nobody was at cannabis school
oh,
for that. You know, we all had our own journeys and our own reasons for coming, and so many great stories coming out of that.
oh, I was mind blown. I'm sure in your case, cried. I cried so much in cannabis school because we were all like this huge, like, outcoming of these emotions, and being able to talk about cannabis and how it's helped us, and the power of the plant, and just, yeah, it's crazy. So don't feel ashamed if you use cannabis. I just, that's like my biggest thing. I'm just like, but here's another thing too, if you're watching, because I know a lot of people I know are from states that are just going recreational. Some bud tenders are great, but you walk into a place and you can walk out of there with the wrong product that's going to do exactly the opposite. For instance, if I use a certain type of THC, it will trigger my anxiety the next day, and I will be a hot mess. So knowing what you're ingesting when you're ingesting THC products is very important. Ingredients, there's just so much to it that I didn't know about until I went to cannabis school. I mean, it's just, yeah. It's incredible.
And there's people that do know and can answer your questions. And there's a,
Right.
a long list of cannabis coaches that also offer cannabis concierge service, which is just helping you find your ideal dose and just helping you dial it in without the full coaching program. So look for those
Right.
services as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've had 75-year-old ladies come to me and they're like, I just got my medical card because I have XYZ and I don't know where to start. Now, they've never used cannabis in their life, and then their XYZ symptom or whatever is gone after just trying 1 milligram of something. It just,
Yeah.
so it has to be, you know, large doses. So yeah.
It's so beautiful. So Gut Girl Coaching, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you have to offer, how people can get in touch with you, and anything else you'd like to say about your program.
Well, obviously, I'm passionate about gut health, but I will tell you that the cannabis side of it and the endocannabinoid system, and that's a whole nother podcast about what that, or interview what that is about. But I really believe in using the endocannabinoid system to help your body with lots of ailments. So my flagship thing I like to do with people is an 8-week program that always looks different depending on my clients. I've worked with clients that have restless leg syndrome. I've worked with clients that have chronic cough from something, a virus from long ago, gut stuff, food stuff, like, and food that has cannabis in it, like hemp seeds. I work with people just trying to find the right movement for themselves, or sleep menus, food menus, all of that whole body, experience, mindset stuff, calming the mind, meditation. So the coaching that I offer is really depends on each client and what their needs are, but I have a really good skeletal outline of what that should look like to help get balance their endocannabinoid system, because that's what I'm really passionate about, and I think that's what really helped me. I also, one of the things I offer too is if people want to make their own medicine, I will walk them through that on a Zoom call, give them the tools they need to figure out what they need to do to make their own medicine. Cannabis consultations. It doesn't matter if they're in New York and they have a dispensary down the street and they don't know what to take for XYZ. Like, hey, you have this, then I would suggest this. I do quick consultations with people, but again, it's not a one and done thing. I prefer to meet
Yeah.
with somebody over a period of time, even if we only check in once a month. So I tailor my coaching for individuals, based on what they're looking for. I mean, I have some people that come to me that they have a gut bloat and they're like, they have no idea why. And, we start off with the endocannabinoid system, but a lot of times we go deeper into food or we go deeper into this. So it just really depends on the client. I'm looking at my notes here to make sure. Oh, and I like to use word movement instead of exercise, because exercise, even back in the day before I started doing it, had such a bad connotation to it. And now it's like, movement is what's so important. They say that sitting is the new smoking. That's what they're saying. Like sitting around is smoking. So I like to help people figure out how they can fall in love with movement too. and do part of that. So I offer a free 30-minute discovery call where I just ask them questions, find out what's going on, explain my services, and usually people take away something that they can use in that 30 minutes. And people can book that at gutgirlcoach.com. That's my booking website, gutgirlcoach.com. And then my website, of course, coaching.com. So,
All right.
yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for everything you brought today. I've learned a lot through your journey, and even just, comparing to my candida to your Crohn's, and the way you've gone through some of those things. It's just an incredible story. And I love hearing how CBD helped so quickly in that journey and just changed everything for you. Cannabis really is a healing plant for all of those things. So balancing that endocannabinoid system being the end game. It's so great to hear it in so many different stories from people, and incredible stories like what you shared with us today. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, and I can't wait to see more of what you offer out there, and looking forward to some of your posts and contributions to our newsletter this month.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.